Battlefield has always been about massive maps, big explosions, and buildings collapsing like they were held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. After a few years of Battlefield games that flopped, the developers are strutting out like they've cracked the code, promising a return to form so epic it'll make you forget Battlefield 2042 ever happened. So, is Battlefield finally back? What better way to see than to look at its destruction? This time it's promising destruction so satisfying, you'll wonder if the structural integrity of its buildings were approved by a guy with a clipboard and a blindfold. Back in Battlefield Bad Company 2, you could flatten an entire village. In Battlefield 4, skyscrapers came crashing down during gameplay in shared events called Levolution events. And now Battlefield 6 says we can break everything, which sounds awesome, but it also sounds like the same thing they said last time. Destruction puts you in the battlefield. It sets Battlefield apart from every other game, and it makes you feel as if you're right there storming through the action. No other game puts you in the battlefield quite like Battlefield. But what kind of destruction is in Battlefield 6? Let's start with small-scale destruction. This would be the smaller objects and set pieces that you find in the world. Smaller props like wooden fences, chairs, and interior decor often vanish entirely with just a few bullets, while more reinforced cover like sandbag walls or metal barricades require repeated fire or explosives to remove. Battlefield 6 lets you blast holes through doors with your rifle, delete furniture with an LMG, or toss a grenade into a room and watch the decor get rearranged. Vehicle impacts obliterate lighter objects like street signs and small fences, while heavier structures like concrete barriers will stop most vehicles unless struck at high enough speeds or with big enough vehicles. It would have been cooler though if street signs didn't just vanish when they were knocked from their posts, as is the case with almost every object, trees included. It would be so much cooler if the trees didn't just plop out of existence. Most items like window shutters use preset damage states instead of full physics simulation, opting to switch out models instead of simulating the destruction. The vending machine is a good example of it swapping models out to different damage states. This is the same thing the 3D era GTA games did when you'd crash your car. They'd just swap out a piece of the car with the damaged version. But most of the time you're too busy dodging bullets, ducking explosions, and praying your aim doesn't look like a drunken stormtrooper to even notice. You're basically ignoring those model swapping and preset destruction animations that the whole game is made of. It's not a true physics-based simulation, but it's enough to feel like it's a war zone, so you can focus on what really matters, winning the game, flexing your score, and maybe not blowing yourself up with your own grenade for once. There's so much that goes into creating games like Battlefield. If you've ever been curious to learn what developers do, this video's sponsor is for you, boot.dev. It's a back-end web development platform that actually makes learning fun. You dive into real coding projects using Python, Linux, and Git. And instead of watching endless videos, you're solving problems the way you would on the job. If you ever get stuck, there's a bear wizard named Boots to nudge you in the right direction. You earn XP, complete quests, unlock achievements, and climb the leaderboard. Basically, it's like Battlefield progression, but instead of unlocking a rocket launcher, you're unlocking a 6-figure skill set. You can read and watch everything for free in guest mode, and if you decide to go premium for the hands-on features, there's a 30-day no questions asked refund policy. Go to boot.dev with the link in my description and use my code DARKSPACE to get 25% off your entire first year on the annual plan. Thank you boot.dev for sponsoring this video. Unloading an automatic weapon into concrete produces visible divots. Metal in pretty much any surface leaves bullet holes. Paint buckets explode colored paint all over the place. And glass explodes instantly. A glitch seems to be in the beta where when you destroy an object, it changes colors because the destroyed object isn't matching the right color as the original good object. So if you shoot a blue chair, for instance, it'll destroy and become a white chair, the default white chair. Bullet holes do not last forever. They disappear after a minute or two. But lights can be shot out still, which is pretty neat. I remember this from Battlefield 4 where they had a cool underground garage trailer and they showed that they could shut off the lights down there by switching a light or something. When it comes to buildings in Battlefield 6, destruction plays a central role in shaping the battlefield mid-match, allowing players to breach specific entry points or create new lines of sight. However, again, most of the destruction relies on preset damage states or swap models, making most collapses feel more scripted than simulated. Still, the chaos of watching a once safe perch crumble into dust adds a layer of immersion that few shooters can match. blowing out a wall to rob enemies of their cover or expose objectives. In Battlefield 6, buildings have structural limits. The more you strip away at the outer layers, the closer you get to what developers call the apple core. Entire structures can be chipped away piece by piece, outer walls blown open by RPGs, and corners shredded by tank shells. However, it doesn't seem that any building can truly collapse like we saw in Battlefield Bad Company 2. In fact, from what I've seen, pretty much any interior core wall is invincible. Only the outer shells of buildings can be destroyed. This means taller, multi-level buildings don't collapse. They just break apart the outer shell until all that's left is the apple core. If I'm wrong about this, please let me know in the comments. Red Faction Guerrilla set the gold standard for freeform destruction, using a fully physics-based system where every building could be taken down piece by piece. Hit a support beam with a hammer, plant charges on a corner, or yeet a truck through a wall. The collapse was entirely based on structural integrity, not preset animations. It felt unpredictable, creative, and brutally satisfying. Truly, Michael Bay approved. In comparison, Battlefield 6 feels a bit cheap. It's trying though, but it makes sense that Battlefield focuses on a more controlled style of destruction that better serves the vision of the gameplay. While Red Faction can literally level everything in sight, that wouldn't really work in a multiplayer shooter like Battlefield, so it's less unleash the chaos and more, here's a chaos coupon redeemable for one controlled collapse. Unfortunately, in Battlefield 6, most of the time, debris just disappears seconds after landing on the ground. The smaller bits of rock and debris shrink into oblivion. Then a second or two later, the larger objects that were originally attached to the wall just snap out of existence. The chunks and pieces that fall off the sides of buildings actually have simulated physics-based falls. They collide with other objects and they land on the street, hitting everything along their path. They can even cause cars below to explode too when they land on them. Sometimes water can be seen pouring out from the street or from the buildings, which makes the destruction look that much more real. Interestingly, some buildings seem to already be destroyed on the inside before you even blow them up. If you look inside them, you can see that the rubble is actually sitting inside, even in perfectly normal buildings. So they obviously just forgot to make that pop up when the destruction occurs. It's just always sitting in there. Sometimes a wall collapse will create a rubble pile on the ground too, which can reshape the battlefield, providing cover. Sometimes it looks a bit cheap and lame, but it's good from a gameplay perspective, and it does enough to sell the idea that a building wall just came down. I've noticed that standing directly underneath a falling building facade doesn't really hurt that much. I would have thought you'd die standing under something like this, or at least get close to death. It also looks like the Levolution feature from the previous Battlefield entries has not been included here, which I think most people will probably like, because many people felt like it was just a gimmick and it ruined the gameplay for most matches. You can drive vehicles straight through buildings too, especially with a tank. Some bridges can even be brought down. This is the kind of stuff that made Battlefield so great. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to play on the New York map yet. That one's available next weekend. Battlefield 6 takes vehicle destruction further than I've seen in previous installments. Crashing a helicopter or jet can feel brutal. If you hit it just right and the game decides to work, you'll get to see a pretty cool explosion and scene of destruction. Slamming a jet into the ground turns you into a firework. Debris, smoke, and a charred crater are all that remains of your career in aviation. This all makes the vehicles feel heavier and more tangible. Ground vehicles showcase a decent level of detail. Windows can be shot out, doors blown off, but headlights don't actually break, they just kind of explode with a glass effect and a crack decal. When shooting off doors of a car, they fling off with force as if they had exploded off. It's likely because the only animation they have for them detaching is for when the vehicle explodes. Unfortunately, like many destructible elements in the game, those pieces quickly disappear. But they didn't stop at the buildings or vehicles. Battlefield 6 lets you damage the very ground you stand on. Tank shells and airstrikes carve out real, persistent craters, deep enough to dive into for cover and set up a defensive hold. These aren't just cosmetic scars. They alter sightlines, movements, and strategies as the match unfolds, making every explosion a permanent part of the terrain. The only thing that would have made this better is letting us straight up dig holes with explosives like in Red Faction 2 from 2002. One of the more subtle touches is the fire spread. Explosions near dry grass or wooden props can spark localized flames and leave scorch marks behind. It's a far cry from Far Cry 2's wildfire system, but it adds just enough heat to make the battlefield feel alive. Battlefield 6 nails the feeling of chaos without losing control. From crumbling buildings to vehicular destruction, it brings destruction back front and center where it belongs, but there's still room to grow. Some effects lack persistence, debris can vanish too quickly, and most destruction relies on scripted model swaps and animations rather than full physics. This isn't a revolution in destruction tech. It's more of a refined return to form, and honestly, that's what Battlefield needed. It needed those moments of destruction that put you in the battlefield and make you feel like you're running through chaos with only your objective in sight. That's not just Battlefield gameplay, that's Battlefield storytelling. Destruction isn't just a feature, it's the feeling. And in Battlefield 6, that's finally back. Battlefield moments are back.